Just after leaving the asylum and arriving in Firelink, you can use this piece of geometry to jump up and head straight back to the asylum, a little earlier than you're typically supposed to. Once we're back, dropping down to the stray demon will cause this fight to start, but his health bar doesn't appear on the bottom of the screen and no music plays. Killing him will result in you getting a slab, just like normal. But if we save and quit after killing him, we can fight him again, though this time everything works like normal. Killing him for the second time here will get you another slab, and reloading the game will show that he's properly dead this time. This happens because the asylum doesn't get fully unloaded when you enter Firelink. So when we come back immediately after arriving at the shrine, the stray demon doesn't have his boss script active. We can sort of verify this with how he roams just after starting the game. When you first arrive, he patrols around this room as you walk around the asylum, but once you leave and then return when the game expects you to, he just stands there. If you die, save and quit, or access another area like the Undead Burg, the asylum will get fully unloaded and will function as normal whenever you return back there. While we're here in the asylum, you may notice that Oscar's damage is some ass. This is because the game gives Oscar an Astora straight sword +8, but because this weapon can normally only be upgraded to +5, instead treats it as a +0 weapon. This happens with Nico of Thorland too, though they gave him a +14 Crescent Axe, another weapon that can only be reinforced to +5. Kind of related to the asylum scripts not fully loading, enemies will respawn after the player travels too far, about 2 areas away. If you kill the ghost down in New Londo, travel up to the Undead Burg, and then come back, the ghost will respawn, but their scripts won't be set correctly. So the ghost that would normally attack you through a wall, or while picking up an item or something, will just fly at you instead. Using the Master Key, you can completely skip the Hellkite Drake. If you travel through the Valley of Drakes, into the Darkroot Basin, up Havel's Tower, and finally kill the Taurus Demon, you'll find this bridge to be completely Drakeless. If you never hit the trigger at the start of the Undead Burg, then it'll just never spawn in. But you can go back at any time and spawn it in if you want. On top of that, the encounter can actually be triggered by an invader, strangely enough. Backtracking a bit to the top of this tower in the Taurus Demon's arena, where the 2 crossbow hollows are, if we turn around and look towards the Hellkite Bridge, we can see a doorway just below the safe spot you can use to hide from the Drake's fire. This doorway would connect the other side of this room to the underside of the back of the bridge, but in reality, literally just doesn't exist. If the door did exist, it would be on this blank wall. There is a doorway in this room, but it's on the other side. Shortly after the Taurus Demon, you'll encounter this boar and a bunch of hollows, with one of them running to close the gate up ahead, preventing the obvious way of escape. However, if we kill him after entering the parish through the Darkroot Basin from behind, before his AI is triggered, we can see a really strange interaction. Run through this area to hit the original hollow's trigger, and then run all the way back to just after the first bonfire and trigger this hollow. He'll actually completely ignore you after kicking in the door, and will go straight up this ladder, go under the bridge, up the sewer ladder, through the, courtyard, and then finally run to pull the lever. I would imagine this is probably caused because both of the hollows have a flag to do something after the character walks into a trigger. With this guy kicking in the door, and this guy flipping the lever. Some of you may be wondering what would happen if you hadn't kicked the ladder down before doing this. Sure, why not, man? Just past the boar encounter, through the gate, on this bridge just before the group of 3 hollows, looking up and to your left will show some chains extending a fair amount into the sky. If we head over to them, we can see that they're the chains connected to the elevator shortcut that leads back to Firelink. We can set up a free cam here to show that instead of having the chains spawn from a point as the elevator descends, they're simply always spawned in and just clip through the ceiling to provide a similar effect. This happens with the new Londo Firelink elevator as well, and I think every elevator like this, with chains like these. Within the depths, rats will occasionally jump out of boxes to ambush you. However, if you shoot one of the boxes that holds a rat with a bow, they won't even spawn in. This bug actually got introduced in the remaster, so it doesn't happen on Prepare to Die edition. There's not really a concrete reason for this change, but the strongest theory I've read is there was some sort of issue with multiplayer syncing correctly, and in attempting to fix it, accidentally caused the game to skip over the line that actually spawns the rats when you're far enough away. While we're here in the depths, you'll find a lot of these pieces of shit. There's something a little strange with how the game keeps track of your character's curse status. Typically, after dying to a curse, your HP will be halved when you respawn. However, the curse itself doesn't properly apply until you respawn, meaning if you force quit the game during the animation, you'll still die after reloading, but you won't be cursed strangely enough. Leaving the depths and heading into Blighttown, we can see a strange interaction that occurs with other players down here. Backstabbing a host as an invader while near Quelana's pillar in Blighttown will cause this to happen. This happens for a really interesting reason actually. The developers didn't want a bunch of mosquitoes attacking the player while interacting with Quelana. So to prevent that, they reused this flag from the catacombs that prevents enemy aggro when entering this coffin. However, what if an invader attacked a host inside of one? Well, the developers thought of that, and made the players inside of the coffin vulnerable to a backstab, and created this animation to be used instead of the normal animation. Because they reuse this flag by the pillar, the game thinks you're inside of the coffin and plays this animation instead of the normal backstab. While we're on the topic of dealing with other players, there's a couple other strange interactions I want to show off in multiplayer. For one thing, as a host, you can parry friendly phantoms attacks for some reason. You can't riposte them or anything obviously, but what I really want to show though is this. Using a glitch to buff a normally unbuffable weapon, the Channeler's Trident, and then using its R2 attack, something that normally just buffs other players, causes this to happen. The end of the animation will do a little bit of damage to anything within the AoE of the Trident's buff, including phantoms. After ringing both bells of awakening and entering Sen's Fortress, you may recognize this trick, backstepping through a boulder, which will allow you to super armor through it so you don't get knocked down. This is useful for getting through here a little faster than normal. With the Darkwood Grain Ring though, your backstep changes to this, and also gains some iframes. However, it loses the hyper armor typically granted while backstepping, causing this to happen when attempting to backstep through the boulder. Killing Guinevere's illusion after Ornstein and Smo will of course plunge Anor Londo into darkness. However, if you kill her and then book it out of there, you can actually leave the room without triggering the cutscene or the flag that causes Anor Londo's change. You can trigger the cutscene later at any time by just approaching where she sat. Also, this is fairly well known at this point, but Gwendolyn's arena isn't actually infinite. If you run for about 10 minutes, you can reach the end of it, and they'll just completely stop teleporting, leading to basically a free kill. Using a free cam, we can see that it ends abruptly, a little before it hits the skybox. Another common piece of trivia is this door floating off in the distance when looking out from this balcony and the Duke's archives. This was likely misplaced at some point in development and should have been placed here in the prison. Unfortunately, it's not possible to interact with it. I mean, it's not even a door, technically. But there is another door that's actually interactable in the Undead Burg. This door, found by the Black Knight guarding the blue Tearstone ring, is boarded off, but behind it lies a hidden door that, if you can disable collision, is actually able to be interacted with. Of course, it doesn't lead anywhere. It's not like a room or anything like that behind it. As you kill certain enemies, namely ones that were once human, a hidden point system will increment up, eventually resulting in a soft humanity. Typically, it would take about 50 of these crystal hollow guys to drop a single one, but maybe as a form of compensation for the forced death in Seath's first encounter, the initial crystal hollow you kill after escaping the prison will always drop a soft humanity. You can abuse this by warping to the Duke's Archives bonfire, killing any crystal hollow, warping out to the Undead Parish, and finally, warping back to the Duke's Archives bonfire, and killing another crystal hollow to farm soft humanity. For some reason, this only works when warping specifically from the Undead Parish's bonfire. Unfortunately, because soft humanities aren't rewarded when bosses are dead, Seath has to be alive for this to work. It's also worth pointing out that strangely, while in the painted world, the wheel skeletons, engorged zombies, and phalanxes all won't count towards obtaining a soft humanity. This is especially weird for the wheel skeletons because they do count when killing them in the catacombs. Something mildly related to this are the basilisks found under the Great Hollow. For those who don't know, when you enter the Great Hollow, you'll be given 400 souls for seemingly no reason. This happens because there's actually a couple of basilisks whose spawn points are out of the map, so they simply fall to their deaths as soon as they spawn. For some reason, only one of them gives souls to the player. There are a couple of strange things regarding skeletons that I'd like to mention. First of all, there's a falchion skeleton that doesn't have a shield equipped, but can drop one for some reason. And there's the scimitar skeletons who do wield a shield, the warrior's round shield, but instead, they drop the red and white round shield. The only way to get the shield they actually use is through the Undead Merchant. Disregarding the shields' physical appearances, they're actually really similar, down to having identical stats and almost identical item descriptions, with only a few words differing between them. Also, the scimitar and falchion skeletons both deal bleed damage when attacking the player, despite the weapons not dealing any bleed buildup when in the player's hands. Inversely to this, the Pain and Guardian sword does deal bleed damage when used by the player, but doesn't when wielded by the Painting Guardians themselves. There's a few more little inconsistencies with various enemies. For example, the Dragon Slayer Silver Knights being able to block with their bows for some reason. I think this happens when interrupting their switching animation, which confuses them and initiates a block when they believe they have their shield out. And sword hollows, bashing with shields that can normally only parry. Also, the Dark Moon Nidus and Lautrec have block animations with their parrying daggers, something the player can't do. Though this one isn't really a mistake, I think, and is more just an indicator for when they're able to parry you. Finally, the cleric found in the Darkroot Garden uses Soothing Sunlight, despite that miracle explicitly only being available to players actively in the Princess Guard Covenant. Despite their name, there can actually be a decent amount more than 4 kings. Only 4 are able to be alive at one time, but if we simply kill 3 and then wait around for a while, kings will continue spawning. We can get a total of 7 kings to spawn, with the first 4, and then 3 more spawning after killing 3 of those. After killing them, Koth spawns, and we can talk to him, join the Darkwraith Covenant, and obtain a Dark Hand. There's a really unfortunate bug with this weapon, and both the Ring of Fog as well as the spell Hidden Body will cause it. Using either of these and then blocking with a Dark Hand will produce this really just unpleasant effect. Minor flash warning. There's another strange thing involving blocking that I want to mention here. You may have noticed this minor hitch in the animation when pivoting while blocking. For some reason, this becomes even more pronounced when putting a shield in your right hand, two-handing it, and then pivoting while blocking. Despite the Demon Fire Sage clearly using fire attacks, it actually deals magic damage. And, strangely, is weak to fire. This differs from someone like Waylag, who uses fire attacks and deals fire damage. Or the Daughter of Chaos before the Bed of Chaos. This could be because the Demon Fire Sage is just a reskin of the Stray Demon from below the Asylum. Or it could actually be intentional. It's not the only time elemental attacks deal only magic damage. For example, the
Serpent Mages
cast lightning spells, which deal only magic damage. A possible, sort of truncated explanation for this would be that the Demon Fire Sage channels the power of fire to power his catalyst and casts magic through that. There's nothing concrete about this though. This is just a theory on something that could very well simply be a mistake. A fairly common piece of trivia for this game is that Calamite doesn't just have one eye, but actually has two small extra eyes under the big red glowing one. And we can see that this misconception actually made its way into the game in the Obsidian Greatsword's description. We get this weapon from cutting off Calamite's tail. And its description reads, "This great axe, one of the rare dragon weapons, is formed by the tail of the one-eyed black dragon Calamite, the last of the ancient dragons. The mystical power of its obsidian blade will be released when held with both hands." It specifies that the dragon has one eye and for some reason calls the weapon a great axe, which obviously it just isn't. To be fair though, this could be not a mistake and more just how Calamite was known in universe. Speaking of boss weapons, there's a bunch of inconsistencies between the three versions of Artorias' swords. Like how all versions of the sword require int and faith to use, though 20 and 20 for normal and 18 and 18 for cursed and abyss. Only the normal version actually scales with these stats, meaning that you can use the cursed version or the true version without meeting the int faith requirements, and deal full damage, but you'll just bounce back every time you hit anything. Also, the Greatsword of Artorias, and only the Greatsword of Artorias, has a 1.2x modifier to damage dealt to Servants of Dark. This applies to Dark Wraiths, the Four Kings, Thorn Knight Kirk, and both Primordial Serpents, though neither can be killed of course. Strangely, this doesn't apply to Manus, any of the Ulusilian Bloatheads, the Chained Prisoner, or the Humanity Sprites for some reason. You know, there's another minor item error that can be found before even starting the game, during character creation. Here, you can select Goddess's Blessing as your starting gift, but of course there's no item named that in the game. Upon loading in, you'll find that choosing this option gives the player 3 divine blessings. This, and the mistake in the Obsidian Greatsword's description I mentioned, are probably both just simply translation errors. If you turn around after entering Firelink Altar, you can see a couple of staircases on either side of you. Using noclip, we can head over to what's in between them, a bunch of urns and what looks like a lord vessel above them all. If we go off to the right, through this wall, we can see what looks like a physical entrance into the altar. It's just barely hidden out of view, and if we head this direction from here, this happens. We actually caused Firelink's Shrine to load in. In some concept art for the game, and an unused cutscene, we can see that Andre was originally going to push this statue in Firelink at some point in the game, so it's possible that the path behind it would have led here. There's no proof of this, of course, it's just a neat theory. Speaking of Andre, there are a couple of strange things about him. For one thing, he's the only human character whose lips move when he speaks.
Need anything forged?
Also, after killing him, he's the only NPC in the game whose body doesn't just disappear. Instead, his body remains on the ground, able to be thrown around like a ragdoll. Both of these could be, less mistakes and more just remnants of how Andre was originally a much more important character in the game's story. but eventually got relegated into just being a bum-ass blacksmith. Well, that's all I got. If you like this video, you probably like the video I made a couple months ago about glitches in this game. Thank you for watching.